So you mentioned the EPA, the administrative agencies like the CIA and the FBI, and your uncle, John F. Kennedy, expressed desire to, quote, splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the winds, unquote. I myself have been raided by the FBI. I'm one of the few, if not the only, journalist in American history to be raided by FBI agents who took my and my colleagues' journalist notes, and the ACLU came to my defense, which is, I think, a good thing. But in terms of these agencies, going back to my question about was it always this bad? J. Edgar Hoover was the head of the FBI 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Was it worse back then? Is it as bad? Is it getting worse now? How would you compare present day to when your uncle was president?
You mean with the enforcement agencies?
Yes.
I think it's more insidious today because of the technologies of control. Back then, back then you had really terrible people running the agency, like Alan Dulles and James Jesus Angleton, Frank Wisner, people who were genuinely murderous and felt like there was no, controls on their behavior. And they started Operation Mockingbird at that point, which was an operation to compromise American journalists. So they had about 400 journalists that we know of. Carl Bernstein wrote an article about Mockingbird around 1975 or 76 in Rolling Stone. And at that point, I think there were some 400 editors, journalists, from all the largest publications. The New York Times had been compromised. The Washington Post was basically.
What do you mean by compromised for people who?
Well, they were functioning. The high-level people at those journals were working for the agency or had signed secrecy agreements with those agencies, with the CIA, and at CBS, ABC, NBC, high-level journalists. So today, today that's going on. After 75, when it all came out, during the Church Committee hearings, the CIA promised that it would no longer compromise American journalists. It continued the program to compromise journalists all over the world, and today the CIA is the biggest funder of journalism in the world.
And how about present day?
They fund it through USAID. But in 2016, there's a provision in the CIA charter that says that the CIA cannot propagandize the American people. President Obama adopted and I think it was through an executive order in 2016, that essentially reopened the door for Operation Mockingbird so that the CIA began once again to propagandize American people.
And how are they doing that presently?
Well, I mean, we know that they did it. We've published articles on the CHD website that shows the journals that appear now where high-level intelligence officials are, or people associated with the intelligence industry, are running those journals, like Noah Schlackman, who runs Rolling Stone, who came from Daily Beast. Daily Beast was run by John Avalon, who has deep ties to the intelligence agencies. But even journals like Smithsonian and National Geographic, Nature, the Washington Post, the New York Times appear to be compromised by the CIA. We know from the Twitter files at both the FBI and CIA were operating portals within the Twitter and Facebook that allowed them to manipulate information and to deplatform people and to silence certain people that they didn't like.